are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and for all right, and
keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Monday, March 4th. We have a lot to talk about on the show today, but before I get into that, just want to remind you guys to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the following link, that is gsmcpodcast.net. Again, that is gsmcpodcast.net. Makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is gsmcpodcast.net. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. And I did fix the ticker, so the ticker's all good now. Once the show was over, I went back and I played around with OBS here, and I was able to figure out what I had to do to fix it so it wasn't extending off the page. Off of the screen here, or off of the show segment. So I was able to fix it. So we're ready to go. So we have a lot to talk about on the show today. Hope everybody had a good weekend. So we're going to start off the show. We'll talk about some of the possible rule changes for the 2024 season in the NFL, regarding some things, intentional grounding, also, onside kicks as well. So we'll get into that. And also the NFL possibly going to an 18-game, well, not possibly, but it will happen at some point. The NFL is going to go to an 18-game schedule, so we'll talk about that. Then in the second part of the show, we're going to talk about Baker Mayfield and what's going on with him as he is in free agency. But we'll actually talk about the team that he just played for, them re-signing, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers re-signing Mike Evans to a 2-year contract. So we'll get into that as well. That happened this morning, so we'll talk about that. Then in the third part of the show, we'll talk about Joe Burrow and where he is at in his rehab. So we'll talk about that in the third part of the show. And then in the final part of the show, we will get into Brandon Ayuk and whether or not he will be traded from the San Francisco 49ers. So we'll get into all of that. So let's get into the first topic, which is talking about rule changes for the 2024 season. Actually, before we get into that, I wanted to address this before we go further. So, the NFL community lost a good one this past weekend, and that was longtime NFL reporter Chris Mortensen. He passed away this weekend, and first off, my condolences to his family. This is a man that was part of my life as well as yours growing up, especially watching Sunday NFL Countdown every Sunday growing up, and he was a part of that, him and Schefter breaking things down, latest reports and news. He was a part of my life, and like I said, he was part of yours as well for a long time. And he was diagnosed with throat cancer in 2016, so he had to take time off. Then he came back, and I believe he took time off again in the 2023 season. But yeah, so he did pass away, and like I said, send my condolences out to his family, and he will be missed. And I did watch Rich Eisen and Daniel Jeremiah do a tribute for him, and Jeremiah was very emotional about it. So. Yeah, it was a sad day in the NFL community, and he will be missed. So I just wanted to address that. So let's get into now the first segment here, which is talking about the major rule changes that could be coming in 2024. Yeah, it's kind of hard when I do that, and then now you have to get into what the show is about. But that's, I tried my best. But anyways, so with the rule changes, so there's a couple things. Intentional grounding is one. There could be some kind of altering with it. Intentional grounding calls were significantly higher during the 2023 season. The league is going to address it. The proposed rule change aims to reduce fouls and better protect quarterbacks. So, listen, I know there's a lot of people out there that complain that, this game is not like it once was back in the day because now quarterbacks, you can't hit the quarterback and things like that. They've changed a lot of the rules to, protect quarterbacks. And I guess this is going to be something that is going to continue to do that. And again, quarterbacks are, for the most part, the face of the league. The face of the league, in my opinion, and many others, is Patrick Mahomes. And what position does he play? Quarterback. So you want to do everything you can to make sure that these guys don't get hurt because, again, we saw this past season a lot of quarterbacks got hurt. And listen, we were still watching. But, that's the quarterbacks are the face of the league. And you don't want to see, those guys get hurt, even though that's what ended up happening for a lot of teams. Intentional grounding was called 59 times, indicating a notable increase. The exact details of the proposed rule change are yet to be disclosed. Intentional grounding calls have been inconsistent in the past, leading to confusion among players, coaches, and fans. Now, again, we all know what it is. It's defined as a passer throwing a forward pass without a realistic chance of completion when facing imminent pressure from the defense. So they're looking to change that. The decision not to call intentional grounding during Super Bowl 58 between the Kansas City Chiefs and San Francisco 49ers drew criticism from fans, highlighting the need for clarity in officiating. Yeah, listen, people have been looking for clarity in officiating for years now. And not even just with intentional grounding, but with many other calls as well. Remember, you go back to the championship game between the Rams and the Saints. There was no pass interference called. When Nikel Roby-Coleman, it was clear pass interference. I forget who it was. Was it Deontay Harris? Well, now Deontay Hardy. That was Deontay Harris, I think, right? That was going for that pass. It might have been somebody else. I forget the receiver's name. It was either him or it was somebody else. But I remember Roby-Coleman was the defensive back for the Rams. So yeah, that caused a lot of controversy. Then they made a new rule where you can throw a challenge flag on if it's pass interference or not, and that just really didn't work out. So then they just did away with that rule. So, but we'll see what happens with this intentional grounding penalty. But yeah, if a rule change is implemented, it is expected to result in a decrease in intentional grounding calls for future seasons. So now the next thing is about the onside kick. So this is kind of interesting. So NFL special teams coordinators are proposing a new kickoff rule that would limit onside kick attempts to when a team is trailing in the fourth quarter and require teams to declare their intent in advance. Because now what ends up happening now is that they would have it would be a 6-on-4 formation, 6x4 formation to increase the chances of recovery. If the team does declare they will attempt an onside kick. Only 5.2% of onside kicks were recovered in 2023, with only 2 surprise onside kicks due to run-ups being banned. The proposed rule aims to increase both the frequency and success rate of onside kicks, potentially leading to more late-game comebacks. However, the element of surprise may be diminished as teams will be required to use different formation due to changes in the setup zone. So they're going to meet about it between the 27th or the 24th and the 27th. So that should be interesting if that ends up happening. But yeah, I know that there was the other thing too that many people have said is instead of an onside kick, you have the offense come back on the field and they have to convert a 4th and 15. I'd like to see that. That would be pretty cool. But yeah, with this rule change though, it gives teams a better chance to recover an onside kick. So we'll see if that ends up happening. But the last thing I did want to talk about, but yeah, let me know what you guys think about, the intentional grounding stuff as well as, the onside kick change, possibly. Now, the other thing, too, is the NFL wants to go to possibly a 18-game schedule. Now, it seems like that's going to happen. And there's also speculation that the league may eventually move towards a 20-game regular season, eliminating preseason games altogether. Now, I think we all know what that's all about money. But, the big thing that many people are going to talk about is player safety. And, from what I was reading, does bring up what I just brought up, and that's the quarterbacks getting hurt. There were so many quarterbacks that got injured. And now, not only quarterbacks, but you're just asking for more players to get hurt. Now, the other thing, too, is they possibly would add a second bye week. In addition to there being another game added to the schedule. But, yeah, so it would do away with preseason games if, we go to 20 games. Now, listen, as a fan, it's more football. That's great. But at the same time, we gotta look at the bigger picture. And I don't think the players are necessarily going to be happy about it. But that's if the NFL wants to make more money, that's what they're going to do that. So, it's not going to surprise me if we end up seeing a 20-game schedule. But with the amount of injuries and it's just, is it really worth it? But, was it really bad to go from, 16 games originally to now, now 17, now 18, and now eventually it's going to be 20 games? Again, it's more football for us, but, in the grand scheme of things, you worry about the players' health, and especially coming off of a year where you had, so many backup quarterbacks starting. Do you really think that's a good idea? But, you got that, and then before you know it, we're going to be moving towards, a game every day. I mean, we saw it during COVID, but now, look, the first week of the regular season, you'll have, the Chiefs opening up against whoever. Then the next night, you're going to have the Eagles playing whoever in Brazil. Then you got all the games on Sunday, Monday. I mean, now you got now you're going to have multiple double headers on Monday Night Football during the season. The Black Friday game, so that's another Friday game. You got Thursday Night Football. I mean, the only days that don't, and then you got Saturday games late in the season. And, right now Tuesday and Wednesday don't have anything, but I'm sure the NFL will find something to put, a game on one of those days at some point. It's just, it's crazy. But they have the power to do that. So, I mean, that's something we'll keep an eye on, but I don't know. You just don't want to see injuries. And you're adding more wear and tear to the players if, you go to now, well, they're going to go, definitely going to 18, but now there's the possibility of they're going to go even more than that, to 20, and just get rid of the preseason. So, but yeah, it's definitely going to be a recipe for more injuries, which, again, it's something that I say all the time. I don't want to see people getting injured, as well as you guys. You guys don't want to see players getting hurt, but that's just where we're headed, unfortunately, is more games, and that's going to lead to more injuries. I mean, they could talk about player safety, but, I mean, guys are going to get hurt. If you're going to make the season even longer, guys play injured a lot of times. So, yeah, I mean, again, it'd be more football for us, but at the expense of the players, which, they don't want that to happen. I know they don't. But we'll see. It's something that we have to. I mean, again, I know they don't, but again, that's just me saying that. But again, we'll just have to wait and see. So, let me know what you guys think about all the stuff we talked about in this segment. When we come back from our first segment, or first break of the show, We're going to talk about all the Baker Mayfield stuff, what's currently going on, other teams that potentially have interest in him if he doesn't return to Tampa. Now, there was a move that was made that I did touch upon this morning that I think that's a sign that Baker Mayfield is going to come back. I mean, I still think he's going to come back, but we will touch upon all the Tampa Bay Baker stuff when we return from our first break of the show, though. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the news it fits some losing shit. A stupid myth, you choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh,
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we are now going to talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We'll talk about Baker Mayfield's free agency drama. But I do want to touch upon Mike Evans. So, like I said to open the show, the Buccaneers did, in fact, re-sign Mike Evans to a 2-year, $52 million contract with $35 million guaranteed. Coming off of a great season, 1,255 yards, receiving and 13 touchdowns. Again, has had 1,000 yards in every season since he was drafted back in 2014. He's 33rd all-time in receiving yards and 13th in receiving touchdowns. And now he becomes the league's fourth highest paid wide receiver. And listen, the Buccaneers, they have a ton of free agents like Baker Mayfield, who this is what this segment was mainly supposed to be about until Mike Evans got re-signed. And also they could look to franchise tag their safety Antoine Winfield Jr. So things are looking good for the Bucs because, again, you had a ton of free agents, and it's going to be tough. And listen, there are teams out there that need Mike Evans. And he did say, I did see that he was going to test the market, but I guess the Bucs were like, no, we're going to give you this, and he's like, all right, I'll take it. And now he's back with the Bucs. That I think is going to be what brings Baker Mayfield back. I mean, I think he was already coming back, but I think this kind of just cements that it is going to happen. But there are teams out there that are interested, that could potentially be interested in Baker Mayfield if it isn't Tampa. And one of the teams is the Patriots. The Patriots are reportedly very high on Mayfield, but the likelihood of them acquiring him is a long shot. Also, the Falcons were another team that could possibly be in on him. I know they're in on Fields. I mean, they could draft a quarterback. There's so many different things that they could do as well. But Baker Mayfield is definitely a possibility for them. His next contract is estimated at $120 million. And coming off of a season passed over 4,000 yards, 28 touchdowns on a one-year deal. Several members of the Patriots organization have connections to Mayfield. Their offensive coordinator, Alex Van Pelt, and this is from back when he was with the Browns. Again, I think Baker Mayfield is going to end up back with the Bucs. And, even when seeing all this with the Falcons and the Patriots being potential landing spots for him, I still think it's ultimately going to be Tampa. And again, with Mike Evans coming back, I think Baker's definitely going to be the quarterback next year. And I've talked about the Bucs a lot on the show, and I was very happy with them being the team to come out of the NFC South. I wanted them to win, and myself and people that I've seen on social media are happy with Baker being able to come out and have a good season, and the team was able to win a playoff game, albeit it was against the Eagles, who were falling apart during the year, towards the end of the year. But listen, I was happy. The team at one point was 4-7, and it looked like, they were probably not going to make the playoffs, even though, the division still was up for grabs, but I just didn't feel great about it. I thought the Falcons, it looked like they were going to be the team that was going to take, a stronghold on the division, but that just ended up not happening. The Bucs, they went into Atlanta, they won that game, comeback win, and, Baker got hot, and, the team ended up making the playoffs and winning a playoff game. And listen, it was a close game with the Lions, but they gave him a good fight. And now let's see what they could do next year. But again, this all depends on if Baker comes back to the Bucs, which is going to happen. Mike Evans is back. They're going to franchise tag Antoine Winfield Jr. Levante David, came out and said that he doesn't see himself playing anywhere else other than Tampa. So that's most of the free agents that, the Bucs had, and they're most likely going to get them all back. We'll see, but it seems like it's going that way, at least from what I've, seen. And they released Shaquille Barrett, one of the players from the Super Bowl era, the Super Bowl year. And so that they're gonna have to find a replacement for him, which he wasn't the same player that he once was. Again, it's, making a lot of money, but the Bucs, they're gonna have to revamp the defense a little bit, and I think also there's a couple of things they could do to improve the offense as well. I think getting somebody to complement Rachaad White, that definitely, I've said it before. Rachaad White had a good season, but, I think they should also get somebody else in there to, complement him. And again, there's some big names out there when it comes to running backs in free agency. So maybe that's something that the Bucs decide to, dip their toes in, but we'll see. Again, I think right now their main priorities are to get back their own free agents and then go from there. So, but again, the division, I think, is going to be even better next year. The Saints, their cap situation is not good. So, we'll see if, they end up releasing some guys. They got to restructure. I know I talked about how they restructured Derek Carr's contract, but I know that was a team that when I was looking at an article, from a while ago when I did a segment on it, they were one of the teams that could be trending down because they did end up finishing 9-8. And listen, Derek Carr did catch fire at the end of the year. So if they can maybe carry that into next season, the Saints are going to be, fighting for that division as well. And the Falcons, if they can get the right quarterback, they have the roster to compete as well. So, for Tampa, you can't afford to have that rough stretch in the middle of the season again, because I think the team, at least the Falcons, are going to be better. If they can bring in the right quarterback, they could be looked at as the favorites to win the division. Obviously, with the Panthers, they're kind of, off to the side, especially with the first year that Bryce Young had. It was a rough year for them, and they played the Bucs close both times. They should have won the last game of the regular season. The Panthers could have scored 2 touchdowns, but one of them gets called back. The other one was a touchback. Well, the first one was a touchback. So, the Bucs were fortunate that the Panthers made mistakes. Otherwise, the Saints would have been in the playoffs. But, in terms of now, what would be the best destination for Baker? I mean, it's either I would say right now it's either Tampa or Atlanta. Atlanta, you probably give them the edge in terms of the roster. And then obviously, in Tampa there is the familiarity, and especially now you're getting Mike Evans back. So yeah, the Falcons probably would be the better destination of the two, but because I think they're more the complete team than Tampa is. But, and the Patriots, they got to work on, bringing in playmakers themselves, because, right now they don't really have a ton on the offensive side of the ball. And we'll see. Mac Jones is another quarterback that, could go for. I saw his markets, and it's like for a 5th round pick. I saw at least, but only time will tell. But I think for Baker, he is going to end up back with the Bucs, and they're going to run it back, and hopefully they can improve the team even more, and they try to take the next step next year, which again, the conference is weak. So, it's not like the AFC, which is a gauntlet. But, there are going to be teams in the NFC that are going to be better, and I've said that numerous times. The division, I think, is going to be better. So, the Bucs, again, they cannot afford to, have that rough stretch in the middle of the season. So, but, at least getting Mike Evans back, that's a step in the right direction. Again, I'd have to look at, really got to look at what they have left with their cap situation. If they do bring back Baker and they end up franchise tagging Antoine Winfield Jr., because I can't imagine that they have a ton of cap space. So, the draft is going to be something that they're going to have to address some of their needs. Maybe that's where they go with the running backs. They draft another one. But at least for the moment, they got Mike Evans back. He's going to be a Buccaneer probably for life, I would imagine. Listen, there are teams out there that need a wide receivers. The Jets, I know, are a team that, maybe could have made a push for him. The Chiefs. But, he elected to stay in Tampa. And, and a lot of people said this too, he's got a Super Bowl ring, and he won it in Tampa. He wants to stay in Tampa. He wants to finish his career in Tampa. So, they got him. You still got Godwin. Maybe another receiver possibly you add to the mix. But, again, in a conference that's not that loaded, unlike the AFC, this is a team that could still, if they bring back most of their guys, you either win the division or you could get a wild card spot. So, but again, we will just have to wait and see what ends up happening. Whether it's a matter, I think it's a matter of when, not if, with Baker Mayfield and his return to Tampa. And again, we'll see if they end up franchise tagging Antoine Winfield Jr., but they got Mike Evans back, and now we just got to see if they get Baker back. So now Baker and Mike Evans can continue to build off of their solid 2023 season together. So before I go into second break of the show, just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the following link. That is GSMCpodcast.net. Really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is GSMCpodcast.net. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker. Well, not always, but from here on out, it is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. And also, we're working our way to having super chats. So that is another way to also help the show out, and that's another way to get your comment recognized. So just be on the lookout for that as well. But yeah, so when we come back from our second break of the show, we will talk about Joe Burrow's road to recovery. This month he's going to be cleared. Obviously after the wrist injury that he sustained during the regular season. So we'll get into that, what our expectations are for the Bengals, even though that's something I've touched upon before. But we'll discuss Burrow and the Bengals when we return from our second break of the show. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we are now going to talk about Joe Burrow and his road to recovery. So I know I think I said, before that he's going to be cleared this month, but it was another M month, May. Sorry, I apologize for that. So he anticipates being completely cleared for full contact by the middle of May during the offseason. He's recovering from surgery to repair a torn wrist ligament in his throwing hand, and that's when he got hurt against the Ravens in Baltimore during the regular season. And it was just a strange thing because people noticed the brace, I don't know what the brace, the sling on his, well, not really the sling, but the thing on his hand, and he wasn't listed on the injury report. And then he goes out and plays, and it was a competitive game for a bit, and then he got hurt on the touchdown pass to Joe Mixon. And, then he ended up missing the rest of the regular season, and Jake Browning took over. The Bengals still finished 9-8. They had a chance to make the playoffs, but, fell a little bit short. But, yeah, I mean, that kind of just, basically, put the nail in the coffin on the Bengals season once Burrow got hurt. He does plan to return to full throwing sessions during Cincinnati's organized team activities. So he played in 10 games, completing 66.8% of his passes for 15 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. And obviously, dealt with that and the calf injury that affected him in the beginning of the year. And then once he got it, once the calf injury, went away, Burrow got hot. And, the Bengals were looking like the team that they were, the last couple of seasons. And, they beat the Bills. Jamar Chase has that 3-touchdown game against the Cardinals. And, sorry, I was trying to hold back a sneeze. That's one of the things that happens a lot on the show, or at least once, is me trying to hold back a sneeze. So that was just another one of those instances. But yeah, Jamar Chase has that 3-touchdown game. Burrow, and the Bengals have that good game against the 49ers, winning by a couple scores. Yeah, they beat the Bills as well. The Bengals looked like one of the best teams in the NFL, and then unfortunately Burrow ends up getting hurt. And I think the wrist injury, I think it goes back to the Texans game the week before that, because I think that's how he aggravated it. And then in the Ravens game, that's when he ended up tearing the ligament. listen, the Bengals, if they want to get to where they want to go, Joe Burrow's got to be healthy. And, you know, in the beginning of the season, he wasn't. You know, you could tell the Bengals were off. But, you know, he got healthy. And again, Burrow's a tough quarterback, so obviously he played through the calf injury. But, you know, maybe the Bengals could have held him out for a little bit. And then he could have came back, you know, later on in the season. I mean, again, you know, it's a hypothetical, but, you know, then he ends up getting the wrist injury. And, and then Jake Browning took over. But, you know, and the Bengals, they got to figure out long-term extension with T. Higgins. Because it seems like they were going to, franchise tag him, keep him. You know, you got to work on a long-term deal with Jamar Chase. Tyler Boyd's most likely leaving in free agency. You know, the running back position is going to be something you're going to have to address at some point because, you know, Joe Mixon is getting older. You know, you saw Chase Brown making plays late in the season. But, I mean, if Mixon's not cut this offseason, I mean, it could end up being his final year with the Bengals. So that's something that we'll have to, keep an eye on. But, and with the Bengals, if everybody's healthy, I mean, this team is going to be a force in the AFC. And that's the team that, you know, myself and many others are looking at as the team that could take down Kansas City. And, you know, if that's the case, you know, if everybody's healthy, I mean, listen, they've done it. They've done it once. I mean, then the following year they ended up losing, but by 3 points. I mean, every Mahomes-Burrow game has, you know, it's come down to, 3 points. So, we'll just have to, we'll have to see if they could do it. Because, listen, the Chiefs they're trying to go for a three-peat. And, they could definitely do it. They could definitely do it, but this could be one of the teams that stands in their way. This team has the best shot, I think, to do it. You know, I mean, the Bills, they've come close, but they just can't seem to get it done. And, the Ravens, I mean, the Ravens had their opportunities. They did, and they just could not cash in. But, you know, with a healthy Bengals squad, that's another team that you could throw into the mix. I mean, again, if the Bengals were healthy and they made the playoffs, I mean, who knows what would have happened, you know? But, again, that just ended up not happening. And I apologize. My allergies, again, are, acting up. But, again, it happens. Also, yesterday was just a beautiful day where I am. 60 degrees. It's sunny, because the day before that, it was just all rain, all day, and then we got warm weather finally. So that was nice to finally experience that. Forgot what it felt like, honestly. So hopefully, I could do away with the winter jacket, and we move into warmer weather. Just knocked my mic around just now. I got to play some basketball yesterday. It was not a good day. It was not a good day, though, on the court for me. Defensively, not bad. Offensively, yeah. But it's nice that we got warm weather. So, sorry, went off on a little side tangent there. But, yeah, but back to the Bengals stuff. I mean, listen, this team went to the Super Bowl a couple years ago. They didn't win, of course, but they could have. They had a shot. When Burrow's healthy, they make it to the AFC Championship game. And, I kept looking at this team as, the best team in the division, even when they were in last place. But then Burrow, once they really started catching fire, then Burrow got hurt, and that was the end of it. But they still had their chance. They still had a chance to make the playoffs. They did. It's just, they lost to the Steelers. They had a 10-point lead against Kansas City, and they lost that. So, I mean, listen, they still finished with a respectable record of 9-8. But, with Burrow, if Burrow was healthy the whole season, I mean, they would have won 3 or 4 more games. So, it happens. But, Burrow has gotten hurt before. So, I mean, I think next year he'll be healthy. I mean, that's just me saying that. And I hope he's healthy because, again, he's one of the top quarterbacks in the league, and you don't want to see these guys getting hurt. But that's just what happens. And I still think it's funny how, there were years where Lamar Jackson was the only quarterback that got hurt in the division. In 2023, he was the only healthy quarterback. Was the only healthy quarterback. Where, in years prior, he was the only quarterback that was injured. Now he's the only quarterback that was healthy. So, hopefully we see a healthy Burrow, healthy Lamar next year twice. See some good matchups between those two. So, but I mean, again, the Bengals, this is a team that, if everyone's healthy, should make it to the AFC Championship game. Because Buffalo, I mean, that window looks like it's closing. I mean, the Ravens, you still got the Ravens, of course. We'll see what the Browns end up being like with the full year of Deshaun Watson and hopefully Nick Chubb. In the AFC East, yeah, the Bills, the Dolphins, even though I look at the Bengals as better than those two teams. The AFC South, though, I mean, let's not forget, C.J. Stroud did beat Joe Burrow in Cincinnati. Did do that. So we'll see now Stroud in year 2, because he's going to be playing the Ravens. He's going to be playing the Bills. He's going to be playing the Chiefs. We're going to see Stroud go up against the top quarterbacks in the league. We saw him go up against Lamar Jackson, and, yeah, it didn't go so well, both times. But Texans, you figure, are going to be better. That division. Jacksonville's going to want to bounce back, and the Colts, I mean, how many times am I going to say it? So, that's why the AFC right now, it's a gauntlet. There are so many teams. Well, we could say there are so many teams, but, at the end of the day, it's the Chiefs, and then there's everybody else. So, that's just, again, the Chiefs are in a class of their own, but you got everybody else that's kind of going to be fighting for all those playoff spots. But I'm excited. If everybody's healthy, it's going to be a lot of fun, to watch all those teams. And listen, I also hope that Aaron Rodgers is healthy next year for the Jets, because I want to see him go out on a high note and not like that. And I get that. The Jets, there's so many things going on with the Jets. I mean, now McCall Hardman's coming out and saying that he never leaked any game plans to any of the teams. It's just, and the Jets could be adding 2 more Packers, former Packers, Valdez-Scantling and David Bakhtiari possibly. Well, I'm just saying that. There's no, traction on that, but it's a possibility. So, we'll just have to wait and see. But, yeah, so let me know what you guys think about Burrow's road to recovery. What are your expectations for the Bengals going into next season? So when we come back from our final break of the show, we're going to talk about Brandon Ayuk. And is it possible he's going to be traded, or what's going to happen there? I mean, I know there's some conflicting things that I've read. The 49ers want to keep him, but if they're not able to, they could trade him. We'll get into all that when we come back from our final break of the show. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we're going to talk about Brandon Ayuk of the San Francisco 49ers and whether or not he could be traded. Now, I know this is something we talked about, in a previous show, but I know there was a couple of articles I was looking at. The first thing is the 49ers do want to indeed keep Brandon Ayuk. And, yeah, I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer statement. But, you had John Lynch, the general manager, coming out and say that the team wants to keep him. He talked about how, the 49ers have a track record of, re-signing their players. But there's also the chance that he might not come back. They might not be able to work out a long-term deal, and he could end up getting traded. Now, if he's on the trade market, plenty of teams are going to be calling. Then it's all about just getting the right package together to acquire him. So Ayuk's current contract includes a $14.1 million player option for 2024. He's set to become a free agent next offseason if no extension is reached. In 2023, he had a career-high 1,342 receiving yards and scored 7 touchdowns this past season. He could be a potential trade candidate if no extension is agreed upon, but the 49ers do believe Ayuk is part of the team's future plans, and this is according to Ian Rappaport. Ayuk has had a very nice connection with Brock Purdy, and that adds to the reasons for the 49ers wanting to prioritize keeping him on the roster. The potential value of Ayuk's upcoming contract is estimated at $22.9 million annually for a 4-year deal, which could be a financial challenge for the 49ers and their cap situation. But yeah, now ESPN's Dan Graziano said that he could become a trade candidate if, an extension is not agreed upon. So, it's something to definitely keep an eye on. And obviously you had, Ayuk post, that message on social media. So, listen, the 49ers are going to do what they can to try to bring him back. And, I mean, if you're Brandon Ayuk, I mean, unless you're going to a team in the AFC, unless you're going to, like, the Chiefs or, the Bengals or somebody that is a legit Super Bowl contender, I mean, there's not really that many teams out there besides the 49ers that have the roster to, get to the Super Bowl. The Chiefs, I mean, you might look on the offensive side of the ball, and outside of, obviously Mahomes and Kelsey and a few other guys, the offensive line. I mean, you look at the receivers. I mean, the Chiefs are lacking receivers, but they just won the Super Bowl. Your team, the 49ers, there's not that many teams out there that really are in prime position. You look at and say, this team is a Super Bowl contender. There's not that many teams. There are teams that are playoff contenders, but, the 49ers, I think at this point, give Ayuk the best chance to win a championship. And it's just unfortunate for them that they once again ran into the Kansas City Chiefs. It's unfortunate. And those players, they deserve a Super Bowl ring, and they've just come up short to the same team twice. Which really, it just... I mean, I know McCaffrey, he was playing in his first Super Bowl, Purdy, but if you're Debo and you're Bosa and Kittle, it just got to sting. Fred Warner. I think Greenlaw was on the team as well the first time they played, I believe. Armstead. I mean, it's just, you feel for those players. But it happens. And Ayuk and those guys, some of those guys, they're looking to get paid. And, if you're the 49ers, you're not going to be able to keep everybody. Because one of the things that they talk about in some of the stuff I was reading is, the DeForest Buckner trade. Key guy on their defensive line. They weren't able to keep him, and they ended up trading him to the Colts. And they had to replace him. They drafted Javon Kinglaw, and now he's a free agent. I don't think they're bringing him back. So, I also did see that that I think there's some interest in bringing back Chase Young. So we'll see if that ends up happening. But yeah, I mean, look, the 49ers, they have one of the best offenses in the NFL. And with Brock Purdy and Brandon Ayuk, yeah, they had a great connection. And listen, a lot of individuals out there say, Brock Purdy's a system quarterback, and now he ends up losing Brandon Ayuk potentially. It's really going to put Brock Purdy under a microscope. People are going to be like, okay, well, now what are you made of? Let's see. Now you lost one of your key pieces. And again, we saw what the team looked like during that stretch during the season where, Deebo Samuel was not playing, was hurt. Trent Williams was hurt. And Brock Purdy looked like a different quarterback. And they came back, and the 49ers, got back to, how they were in the beginning of the season. But how if you lose Brandon Ayuk, a key piece on the offensive side of the ball? That's going to hurt Brock Purdy. And all the Brock Purdy critics are going to come out, and that's not going to be good. So if you're the 49ers, you want to make sure that Ayuk stays. Now, I mean, listen, I think Brock Purdy is solid. I've said this. I don't think he's, in that elite class, but I think he's solid. I thought he played well in the Super Bowl. I mean, he could have did more. And listen, you're going up against Mahomes. So that's right now, that's the standard. So, and he's not Patrick Mahomes. He's not an elite quarterback. So, yeah, he couldn't match what Mahomes was doing. But I don't know. Also, you kind of got the ball to your playmakers more. But there's a lot of other things with that. Listen, the game plan was McCaffrey. The game plan was McCaffrey, and even listening to George Kittle talk about it, give Christian McCaffrey the ball a ton of times. McCaffrey was the game plan, and McCaffrey had a good game. Juwan Jennings had a good game. He had 2 touchdowns, the passing touchdown to McCaffrey, and then the receiving touchdown. But Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk should have more than 3 catches in the Super Bowl. George Kittle should have more than 2 catches in the Super Bowl. You got all these weapons. So, that's another thing that was curious, is just the fact that those guys really did not have an impact on the game. It was McCaffrey. Now, it makes sense because McCaffrey is the best running back in the NFL. But you got all these other playmakers. Get them involved. And maybe that's why, Brandon Ayuk had to, post on Instagram after the, a day or whatever. It was after the Super Bowl. I don't think it was right after, but it was after the Super Bowl. Yeah, because he just was not involved. 3 catches. Deebo, 3 catches. Although Deebo was hurt, he was in and out of the game, but still. But, again, this is another storyline to keep an eye on in the offseason. But, the 49ers, they can't afford to lose Ayuk. And this team has gotten close to, now they got to the Super Bowl, but they didn't win it. They're a team that's going to be right there next year. If the team stays healthy. They are going to be right there again. Conference is going to be better, but right now the 49ers are the class of the NFC. The Lions did almost beat them. The Packers almost beat them. But right now, I still look at them as the best team in the NFC. And we'll see what team ends up being the team that knocks them off, at least on the NFC side of things. Because we know, when they get to the Super Bowl, they play the Chiefs, and the Chiefs end up winning. But again, I don't think it's really anything to be ashamed about. It's the Chiefs. But we'll see. And it's tough because, you go back to the last time they played the Chiefs. The following year was the COVID season, and they had injuries galore. Their whole defensive line got hurt against the Jets. You had Garoppolo and Kittle and Debo. All these guys got hurt. Key players in 2020. And, that just derailed their season. And then they were healthy. They made it to the championship game. They lost to the Rams, made it to the championship game again, lost to the Eagles, made it to the Super Bowl, lost to the Chiefs. So outside of the injury-plagued season, 49ers have been to the NFC championship game or the Super Bowl. They're still the class of the NFC. Well, this year they were but, they lost to the Eagles, they lost to the Rams. Rams won the Super Bowl. Eagles, they, lost a shootout with the Chiefs. But, they've been one of the best. But now look at what happened with the Eagles and the Rams. Look what happened to them. Well, the Rams, they dealt with a lot of injuries in 2022. Then they bounced back. The Eagles, they fell apart at the end of the season after they, lost to the 49ers. The 49ers have been consistent. It's just then there'll be teams that, Rams, they take them down. The Eagles take them down. And then the other 2 years that they made it to the Super Bowl, they lose to Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. So, yeah, they can't afford to lose Ayuk. That would be a big blow to the offense. Listen, they got to run it back. Run it back. And it's like, what else can they really do? I know some people say, well, get a better quarterback that can, compete with Patrick Mahomes. But again, Brock Purdy didn't even play bad in the Super Bowl. He didn't turn the ball over. Christian McCaffrey turned the ball over. Brady Ray McLeod turned the ball over. Well, I'm not going to get on McCaffrey. McCaffrey would have been the MVP. But the game-changing play was Ray McLeod fumbling the punt return. The Chiefs cashed in immediately. If that doesn't happen, the 49ers defense was playing really well. Mahomes got picked off. They were getting to him. The 49ers had that game. But, you crack the door open for the Chiefs, they're going to walk right through it. And that's what happened. And they ended up winning. So, I don't really know what else the 49ers could have done. I thought they played a good game. It's the Chiefs. That's really just how you look at it. It's the Chiefs. So, again, the Brandon Ayuk stuff, we'll make sure to keep an eye on it, as we move along here in the offseason. But the 49ers, from what it seems, they're going to do whatever they can to make sure they keep him. But he seems like a guy that wants to get paid. And, from what's happened over, the last couple of off seasons where you've had big name receivers, leave to get paid elsewhere. Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams. We've seen A.J. Brown get traded on draft night. There have been big name wide receivers that leave. Now, those receivers I would rank ahead of Brandon Ayuk. But Brandon Ayuk is a solid receiver. And whoever gets him is getting a good player. And let's not forget, in 2021, he was like a non-factor in the beginning of the season. And then he finally, started contributing. And, since then, he really has, upped his game. And like I said, if it's not the 49ers, whoever gets him is getting a solid receiver. And there's plenty of teams out there that need receivers. So, again, something to keep an eye on. But, that's pretty much it for the show for today. I thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back again tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And until then, I'm Kenneth Grunfelder signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will see you guys next time. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great.